welcome to another video. You've got Mr. Everything English and we are 3 days out. 3 days out of your second English literature exam. And this exam looks at Shakespeare, which is predominantly your Macbeth and Romeo and Juliet, and it looks at unseen poetry. Now, based upon the title of this video and probably the thumbnail of this video, you probably clicked on the video for different reasons. As your exams are so close, guys, so close, you know we do what we can to help you. So we bring out one of the OGs of YouTube English videos, guys. So today, guys, we have Mr. Salles, and he will be helping me go over some stuff when it comes to Macbeth.
Thank you very much for having me on your channel. I can't tell you how excited I am. Let's get into our first quotation, which you're going to be able to use whatever the question is. What quotation have we got?
Guys, what we're going through is the one that makes you giggle. We are going through "Unsex Me Here." Now, this is the quotation that we've chosen. Now, there's many reasons why we chose this quotation, because there's a gazillion others to choose from. Guys, this quotation can be used for so many different questions. For example, I'll give you guys one. It can be used as a straight shoe for the character of Lady Macbeth. If you get any question at all when it talks about the character of Lady Macbeth, "Unsex Me Here" is your best friend because it always fits. So, any other questions?
Yeah, there's going to be loads, aren't there? So this happens when she wants supernatural help to unsex her. So obviously that's going to fit.
Yep.
Question on the supernatural.
Yeah, so guys, you've got supernatural, you've got Lady Macbeth. Then you've got the idea of power and ambition. Her drive, because this is what she's willing to do to get what she achieves. So you've got her as a character, you've got the supernatural, you've got ambition, you've got her quest for power, which comes with her quest for ambition. So any others?
Yeah, so interestingly, you might think, well, could I use that to talk about Macbeth? And actually you can, because this gives us a real insight into what their marriage must be like and what it must be like to be the wife of a powerful man and why she needs to change that.
Yeah, because you could write a whole paragraph how Macbeth is a weak character because of the type of woman that he has. And that then links to gender roles. That then links to patriarchy. Guys, do you see? It's like a never-ending spiral. This quote, guys, can be applied to so many different questions. Now, sir, the first thing that we do with a quote is we see what we can find in it. Because I always say, guys, what do year 11s do, sir? Every year, Mr. Salles. Year 11 sit there, "Sir, I can't analyze my quote." And what do I say? So why did you pick it for? All the quotes in the book, why did you pick one that you can't analyze? So what we have to do is first analyze the quote together. Now, what do we analyze it for? We analyze it for AO2. So very briefly, in case someone here doesn't know what AO2 is, guys, in a nutshell, what would you say, sir, AO2 is?
I wish you hadn't asked me that.
So guys,
language features, language devices.
Yeah, so guys, AO2 is looking at language, structure, and form. Language is looking at language devices, verbs, adjectives. Structure is structured devices, and form is looking at what are you actually reading and how does that affect. So we're going to start from language. Any language devices in this quote that you think are worth talking about? Any language devices?
Okay, so I'll start off with the imperative here. So the imperative means she's giving a command. So that's really interesting to us because she's asking for supernatural help, but she's saying, "Give it to me, I'm in charge."
Should we then head over there?
Go for it.
Oh, should we move that over there?
So on the imperative here, where she's giving a command. So using this vocabulary is going to really help me ask the examiner to give me high marks. She's being commanding.
Okay.
What are you going to go for?
Now, guys, we're going to analyze these later. For now, we're just picking. What can we find? So let's start with the prefix over here, guys. We are looking at the word "un." Well, not the word, but the part of the word "un," and this is the prefix. So we have the imperative, we have the prefix. Done for language. Because there's probably a gazillion other language devices, but there's only so much you can talk about in a paragraph. So next on the list is structure. What can we find here? Now, I'll start with this, guys. For me, guys, this quote is also foreshadowing. Now, what is it foreshadowing? We can discuss that again later. But for now, we are looking at the idea that this quote is foreshadowing.
I'm actually going to steal something that Mr. Everything English taught me earlier, and it's the juxtaposition. So I'll just put that here. And what's being juxtaposed here is the letter that Macbeth sent Lady Macbeth.
And we're going to give you the full analysis in a second.
Brilliant.
For now, we're just going to pick. And the last thing, guys, is form. So is this a poem? Is it
It is. It does rhyme occasionally. Is it a
gothic genre novel? What are we reading here? What are we looking at, sir?
I do make fun of this because at least 30% of students will write down in the novel instead of in the play.
Yep. Guys, when you look at form is, as a starting point, what is this? What am I looking at? And the basic form of this, as you all should know, it is a play, and a play has an audience. Now, we'll again go into the detail later. For now, this is what we're going to be discussing. Now let's go back to the language, and let's begin analyzing the imperative, and let's begin with the prefix. So the floor is yours. You may begin with either or.
I'll start with the imperative then. So, why is she commanding the witches to give her help? And the main reason is that there is a sense of urgency.
Yep.
She knows that Duncan is coming, and this is the only opportunity that she's going to get to persuade Macbeth to kill Duncan. And in order to do that, she believes, and we'll explore why later, that she needs to be unsexed. And so it has to happen now, because this opportunity will not come again.
And on that urgency point, you could add the idea of desperation.
Nice.
Because it's urgent, because she understands it must happen tonight, but that in turn results in her becoming desperate. Maybe if Duncan wasn't coming tonight, maybe this wouldn't be said.
Yes.
It's the idea that, listen, if I'm going to do this, I've got to do this tonight. I can't wait. So guys, the urgency and the desperation, they go hand in hand. So at this point, Mr. Salles, would you say she's powerful or she's weak? Based upon this part of the quote. The idea that she's asking for this to happen right here, now, right now. Because you can argue it can show strength or it can show weakness.
Yes.
Which one would you go for?
I would go for, if we go for the desperation, she wants to feel powerful, but underneath it, she knows that this is probably going to fail, but it's just too big an opportunity to pass up.
Yeah. And don't you think, right, the fact that she's asking for this, it shows she understands what she currently is isn't enough.
Yeah.
She's too weak, and she knows that.
Yeah.
So she understands that her existing form, if you like, the woman she currently is, isn't enough.
Yeah.
She can't do what she needs to do as she currently is. So guys, if I was looking at this quote, right, when it comes to strength and power and so on, I would start it off that she's weak, but she's looking for power. She's searching for power. And that in itself emphasizes, guys, her state that she begins with. Now, that's that part, guys. Desperation. Right here, right now. You can then, if we ignore this part here, I think we're not done yet. I think this part here then shows her driving force. Because unsex me here. She's being asked to be unsexed. And she's being asked to get it done right now, right here. But why? What is the driving factor for this to happen? Yes, Duncan's coming, but what does Duncan coming mean? Yes, Macbeth wrote her letter, but what do all those things mean? For example, Mr. Salles might say to me, he might give me a letter that says, one day you will have 1 million subscribers. But to do that, you must kill Mr. Bruff. How did I make that jump? How did I make that leap? She reads a letter from Macbeth and she becomes like this. How did she go from that to this state right here, right now? There's not been an hour or two of thinking. There's not been a day that's passed. She goes from the letter to this. And guys, it reveals something for me that's always been there. There's something that's always been there. For example, if you did give me a letter saying that to get 1 million subs, I must kill Mr. Bruff, I would say, sir, you're mad. What are you talking about? Because it's not in my mind.
Yeah.
But there's obviously something that's been niggling there for a while. And she's now trying to clasp it, kind of grasp it. This is it. This is my chance to get what I've always wanted. And what is that, guys? That's her desire to be powerful. And that's her desire to achieve whatever she's wanted to in life. Sorry for rambling, but that's that part of the quote. So we're going to move on, or should we stick with this for a little bit longer?
Well, I'm going to introduce something to back you up there.
Thank you so much.
Because it's a really useful thing to think, why does Macbeth bother to write this letter in the first place? when he arrives minutes after the letter. And it's because he understands exactly what you've just been describing. He knows that Lady Macbeth is going to come up with a plan to kill Duncan, and he can't do it himself. And so he knows he needs her help, and this letter is what's going to give her that spark, that urgency, unsex me here to make me cruel enough to kill the king.
That's a very good point, because I've made that point in my own videos, but I've never made the link that he writes the letter knowing that he's coming soon after. That's a very, very good point. He's almost preparing her for what he needs. A separate point, but this now links to when people say that Lady Macbeth is the driving force. Dude, maybe Macbeth was the one that pulled her in the first place. Via the letter. He gets her ready because he's the muscle, she's the brains.
Like it.
So it's that pull. All right. So what's she asking for? Is she asking for a gender change? What is she doing in this court over here, sir? What's happening?
Yeah, students often get confused about this. They go, oh, she's going to be a man. This is mad. But no, she isn't asking for a gender change. So you've got a really good way of talking about this prefix. Take it away, Mr. Everything English.
Guys, when we look at something being undone, like I always think about unzipping your jacket, it's the reverse of what you've just done. So, she's asking to be unsexed. Now guys, remember, in English there's multiple interpretations. It's okay to have a difference of opinion. Now, when I look at unsexed, I don't look at her saying, make me from a female into a man. It's her trying to reduce all the qualities that make a woman exactly that, a woman. Now, stereotypically, Mr. Salles, what would you say how men and women are different? Now, this may go down a different line of conversation, but I don't know, women are more caring.
Yeah, and definitely that's how they were perceived then.
Any other things that women are different?
Well, they're nurturing, they're there to care for people, but in order to bring them up as moral individuals.
That's that.
Yeah.
And guys, that's what she's saying. Get rid of my ability to care. So, make me cruel. And you can link that to the quote which talks about fill me with the direst cruelty. Then she talks about the idea of her milk and how for a woman, her milk is a symbol of that nurturing that Ms. Salles talked about, that care, that affection. Get rid of it. I don't want that. So it's getting rid of all those qualities that make me a soft, affectionate, a caring, a nurturing woman. And instead, replace that with the opposite. So guys, that is what I would talk about when I'm doing unsex. Salles?
Yeah, I'd go into that and I'd talk about the social expectations. So what society, can't talk and write at the same time. Talk about the expectations of women, but also this tells us what the expectations of men are. That they have to be cruel, that they have to be violent. And that helps us understand Macbeth better, which means we're also going to be able to use this to talk about him. So it's really useful to be able to talk about society's expectations of both sexes with this same quotation.
Yeah, perfect. I like that a lot. So guys, that's the language. That's the language when it comes to this particular quote. You've got the imperative and you've got the prefix. Then we move on to the structure. Now, where is the juxtaposition there? Yeah,
Juxtaposition.
So guys, there we have the juxtaposition. And earlier, off camera, me and Mr. Salles were talking about this particular quote and how it might be juxtaposition. And what I argue, guys, is that in this quote, juxtaposition, guys, is when you have two contrasting ideas, for those of you that may not know. Yeah, guys, this goes against, this contrasts what she does earlier. When she first reads the letter, she just talks about Macbeth the whole time.
Yeah.
He's too full of the milk of human kindness and I'm gonna chastise him with the valor of my tongue. It's all about him.
Yeah.
Nothing is about her. But this is the opposite. That's why it's juxtaposition. For the first time, since she finds out what needs to be done, she recognizes herself in all of this and what she needs to do. So that's why I would see it as juxtaposition.
I like to, when you're writing about a quotation, it's a really good skill to be able to link it to other things.
Yeah.
And if we talk about that letter, Macbeth says to her, my dearest partner in greatness.
Yeah.
And so greatness gives her the ambition, but he also calls her a partner and says we're in this together. And I think that's what leads to her now thinking about herself as an equal to Macbeth.
Yeah. And guys, that and that, I always use the word catalyst,
Yes.
and we were talking about earlier. Now, guys, I'm not a scientist, but a catalyst is something that speeds up a reaction. And that, what Mr. Salles just mentioned, is that gets her going. Because for now, for once in her life, she's starting to see herself not as a trophy to her husband, but she's his partner on this venture. And that's what starts to speed up and create a character who realizes that, hold on a second, this is what Macbeth is lacking, but now this is what I'm lacking. And if we can both improve, then together we can be a super power couple. Because that's what I call them, guys. I call Lady Macbeth and Macbeth a power couple up to Act 3. And then it kind of changes, but up to Act 3, guys, they're an ultimate power couple. So guys, we've got language structure, and I think we had structure over here, sir. We had foreshadowing.
Yeah.
What would you say is foreshadowing?
Well, this is foreshadowing her ultimate failure.
Mm-hmm.
So when we see her in the sleepwalking scene, she keeps referencing lots of feminine imagery. Mm-hmm. So she starts talking about the perfumes of Arabia.
Yeah.
She starts talking about the Thane of Fife had a wife. She's thinking about femininity. And of course, she's filled with guilt about what she's done. And part of that guilt isn't just that she's going to go to hell, it's that she's gone against her own sex. So Shakespeare is portraying her at the end as regretting this action she was so urgent about. And that's one of the reasons society punishes her through death.
Yeah, and adding on to that point, this quote then, guys, it gives her a false sense of security. And that's why she becomes like that.
Yes.
Because she never was unsexed.
Yeah.
It never happened.
Yes.
She was always that woman, that kid. Hence why she commits suicide. Hence why she crashes. Because she begins to think, yeah, now I'm unsexed. But it was always there.
Yes.
It was always there. Guys, what's a performance? A performance can only last for so long. She performs this unsexed version of herself. But sooner or later, the cracks begin to show. But also adding on to the foreshadowing, don't you think it foreshadows that she understands the task at hand?
Yes.
And the importance of that task? Because she knows what she has to do. This is not no small request, if you like. She understands that for me to become powerful, for us to be partners in greatness, a lot has to change.
Yes.
And guys, it's foreshadowing her understanding the task that she must now go on. I do feel sorry for her though.
Yeah, I've got a lot of sympathy.
Yeah, people tend to hate Lady Macbeth, right? I kind of feel sorry for her now. Because what the witches do to Macbeth, Macbeth does to her.
Okay.
Like here, isn't it?
Yeah.
They
manipulate him, he manipulates her.
Yeah, and it's quite unfortunate.
Yeah.
Because she decides to give everything up. Yes, for power, yes, for ambition. Now guys, this is just an interpretation. I'm not saying she's in love with Macbeth, but maybe a little bit for her husband. Maybe just a tiny bit, you can argue that. Because in her pursuit of all of this, she understands that she will become powerful and also will Macbeth. But unfortunately, based upon the social expectations and the gender role at the time, Macbeth can keep that role for longer. Because in society, a man was cruel, a man was strong, a man was brave, but she crashes.
Yes.
When does she disappear? In the play after Act 3? You
Yeah,
don't really hear from her.
He deliberately stops sleeping with her, which is why we get the sleepwalking scene. He's not actually with her.
Yeah.
And the key moment is when he says, be innocent of the knowledge, dearest Chuck, and he won't tell her about killing Banquo, and he cuts her off.
Yeah, and it's that point, isn't it? So who uses who?
Yeah.
It's that debate, who uses who, because based upon that, maybe she was the one that was used.
I agree with you, yeah.
With Mr. Macbeth.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, so that was the language, that was the structure. Now we move on to the form. That is the third element of AO2. Now, the form, guys, is the idea of it being a play and it being an audience. And how do you link all this stuff to it being a play? Sir? You said a very good point earlier.
So one of the key things here when you watch the play in production, and you should go and see it if you get the chance, is Lady Macbeth is often played as a highly desirable sexual woman who uses her sexuality in part to persuade her husband to kill Duncan. She isn't just a kind of cruel figure who's exploiting him by belittling his masculinity and undermining him. She does that as well, but she's also incredibly sexual in the way that she approaches him. And often it's staged in that way so that we can understand Macbeth's desire to please his wife as a partner because he's so powerfully attracted to her. And that happens even after she says, "Unsex me here."
Yeah, and a lot of that discussion, it goes further onto the gender roles. Because guys, remember, as an audience watching this play, they would come from fixed roles. If you're a man, you must do this, 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 this. If you're a woman, you must do this, 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 this. Shakespeare in this play, from the very beginning, from Act 1, Scene 1 with the witches, to Act 1, Scene 5, very quickly and very early on, he tips gender roles upside down. And all of this, I think we underestimate the role of the supernatural. Because the supernatural is what Shakespeare uses to expose the flawed society. He uses the supernatural to show us that look at how women are expected to behave. Look how men are expected to behave. Through the witches, he shows us that as a man, when you're given a little bit of power, you latch onto it. As a woman, they are dying for recognition. They are dying for power. So another point about the audience is that for that audience, when it comes to a play, imagine them sitting there and you've got this spectacle. You've got women with beards. You've got Lady Macbeth begging to reduce everything that makes her a female, and those values she wants to get rid of. Where did they come from? They came from the very people sitting in that audience, because the values were created by society. So it's a massive, massive, guys, challenge to the norms of gender in society. This is quite a good analysis. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's going to get everybody to a grade 9.
Plagiarism. Don't watch this video and don't use these ideas. AO3, guys, AO3. So, AO1, guys, was the reference. AO2 was us talking about the language, the structure, and the form. AO3 is the context. And when we say context, sir, do we talk about Mrs. Salles, how many kids Shakespeare had, and what university he went to?
So typically what happens is students go, "Oh yeah, I know I've got to put context in here," and they write a paragraph of context which gets absolutely no mark. What you need to think about context is, what can I include that will help me with the interpretations I've come up with? So you only pick the stuff that's relevant. So pick something.
And this is going to be a no-brainer question. The one context that comes up in every text, or 99.9% of text, starts with P. Starts with P. I'll give you a clue.
Is it the patriarchy?
There we go. Well done, Salles. Well done. Guys, patriarchy. If you've watched enough of my videos, you know, guys, I always say the majority of text that we do for English literature, when it comes to 19th century, when it comes to Shakespeare, when it comes to modern text, patriarchy or a patriarchal society will always be there. Now, patriarchy, guys, as a base point, as a very basic analysis, is people say when men are dominant in society. But it's dominance in all facets. It's through the media, through the education, through the governance. And this, in turn, has an impact on the women who become sexualized objects, for example. So, for example, if you want to sell a car, what do? You put a woman on the bonnet. That's the fruits of a patriarchal society. Now, how are we linking patriarchy to this? How are we linking patriarchy to this? How does this quote show the maybe the danger or the problems of living in a patriarchal society? Here's a few angles. The first angle, guys, you want to come to is it shows us, and this is your clear, obvious point. It shows you the problems of a patriarchal society. It shows you what kind of people patriarchy produces. It produces people who can never be comfortable in their own skin. If you're a man, you're searching for that kind of strong, powerful, courageous, brave Macbeth. That's what you're looking for. And if you're a woman, as you are, you better be beautiful. Because if you're not beautiful, then you're completely stuck. So it produces women who are willing to go to all lengths, because in a patriarchal society, to be powerful, they must be masculine. What do you think, sir?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. If we want to link the patriarchy to the structure of the play, he starts with the witches in order to say that, look, gender is a major theme of my play. And that's why I'm starting with these witches who need power because they're not beautiful. They're deliberately described as ugly. And the other bit of contextual information that Lady Macbeth introduces is that her baby has died. And we can even infer that she's still lactating. She's still producing that breast milk because the baby has recently died, and that also helps explain why she wants power in another form, because society says you've got to give Macbeth an heir, and you've got to become a mother, and she's failed to do that. And because she's failed to do that, that drives her desire to become a queen, to get power in other ways.
I like that. And again, making links across the text, guys.
Yeah.
That point that we just made by Mrs. Salles goes straight back there as well.
Yeah.
The idea that she's failed him in one place, but now let me try to make you successful in the other. Another thing about patriarchy is, I would argue that Macbeth is also a victim of patriarchy in this text. And the reason I would say Macbeth is a victim of patriarchy is because, unfortunately, and guys, this happens in the world today as well. Unfortunately, as a man, he's bought in to all those catchphrases, if you like. So both of them together, they try to live up to expectations that are really impossible to meet. And I think Shakespeare hits the nail on the head through the witches. The witches are literally walking, talking problems of patriarchy.
Yeah.
From the way they talk, from the way they dress, from the way they look, from the way they behave. They are the product of a patriarchal society. And that's the first context that you can link it to. The second one, guys, Mrs. Salles, what do you think? Freud? Should we bring in a bit of Freud?
Go for some Id. Get your Freud in.
Now, guys, this one, you can use it. All of you can use it. I think it's pretty solid context.
Yes.
That every student can use. Guys, the next one, right? You can talk about Freud and you can talk about the id. So, Mr. Salles, if this building was on fire, what would you do? What would be
if this building was on fire
right now? If you see flames around there, what would you do?
This is like SAS Who Dares Wins.
Other than carry me,
Yeah,
save
that's right.
me,
Yeah.
and give me out.
I'd throw you out the window. Then I'd take your camera. Go out
Take the
window with
valuables.
that, take the valuables. But we'd save each other's lives because we're noble, and then we'd save the money.
And how do you behave when you cross the road? What do you do? Do you ever cross the road with your eyes closed? I hope you say no.
I've never done that.
Now, guys, why am I asking these questions? Because as human beings, we have natural instincts. Survival. All of us want to survive. So, for example, if somebody punches you, your reflex is to move. No one, even if you haven't been taught how to dodge a punch, your reflex is to move. When you're young, guys, I remember when a dog chased me, I would run 100 miles per hour. I would jump over walls that are like 7 foot tall. What is it, guys? We all have natural instincts. Survival is a natural instinct. What instinct is she displaying here, guys? What instinct is she displaying here? There are three instincts that we look at. Survival, then you have the idea of worship. Everyone worships something. Doesn't mean you worship God. Some people worship money. Some people worship power. Some people are slaves to their desires. And that's that here, guys. She, when you look at her id, Ford would argue that Lady Macbeth has become a slave to her desire for power. And she is willing to do whatever it takes. Now that links to the superego and the ego, but forget that for now. For this context, just talk about the idea of the id and how she becomes a slave to her innate desire. We all have desires. I'm hungry, for example. If I get hungry, I can either walk into a shop and steal the food, or I can get the food, wait in line and pay for my food. We all have desires. How you fulfill them differs. And that's what separates maybe the good from the bad. She has a desire to be powerful. She has a desire to become the queen, to make her husband powerful. But her id is so consumed with what she wants that she can't see sense. And therefore she's willing to do whatever it takes. And this is what leads to her ultimate downfall. Because at this moment in time, she's so consumed by her id, she has her idea of a conscience is in play.
Yeah.
But later in Act 5, when her conscience comes into play, she crumbles and she crashes. Anything else you want to add, Peter Salles?
Well, I like your idea of the id. So my last idea will be to try and link that to Macbeth.
Yes.
So that you can also use this in a Macbeth question. So he's very slightly different because you talked about his conscience.
Yeah.
And that conscience comes up all the time. So this has now given me a way of interpreting the imaginary dagger scene that I haven't thought of before, but you've just taught me. This is him giving freedom to his own id. When he sees the dagger, he's saying, look, I've thought of all the reasons that I shouldn't kill Duncan, but actually that's not my id. I'm just going to listen to the id, and that's what creates the visionary dagger with the gouts of blood. and he follows it to kill Duncan. So he aligns himself with his wife.
Yes. Now, guys, we've done AO1, we've done AO2, we've done AO3. We've tried our best to talk you through these different stages. We've talked about the different questions that may come up. Guys, we talk about the different questions that may come up for this quote. But as a whole, guys, when it comes to unsex me here, yes, it's a very basic quote. If you're a student, which you all are, but predominantly you are, and you have an English teacher, I can almost guarantee you that your English teacher has discussed this quote. Because it's a very good quote to discuss. But the point of this video, guys, one of the key points is to show you guys that it's not necessarily a matter of picking lines and lines of evidence. We've analyzed 3 words, unsex me here. And from these 3 words, we discussed so much. Now, can you use everything that me and Mr. Salles discussed in a paragraph? Probably not, it's too much. But the whole purpose is that as a student, you're able to, on the day of your exam, read the question and decide which parts you're going to use, which parts you're going to leave out. You may completely ignore our structural analysis and rely upon the language because the question fits it. So that is what you have to do on the exam. And finally, guys, finally, Mr. Salles, any parting thoughts? Any parting thoughts?
I'm always looking for ways to make the exam easier. And so this is a trick that my son taught me when he was doing GCSEs. He only learnt about 8 quotations for each text. Yeah. And he said, no matter what the question is, I'm going to find a way to fit that quotation in.
Exactly what I do.
Yeah.
I do 10.
Yeah.
I do 10 for every text.
And he genuinely did that, and he got 99%. He's a scientist and a mathematician. He couldn't care less about English. Yeah. And what we've done here, if you follow through the video and go back through it, you'll see that we've made it link to all the different parts of the play, to the different characters, to the different questions. And if you do your revision like that with 5 to 10 quotations, you will easily answer every single question you can get asked.
Yeah, I agree. Now, guys, we will end the video here. Now, this is the first of 2 videos. The second video is dropping on Mr. Salles' channel tomorrow, I believe. The link for Mr. Salles' channel is in the bio, so do click, do subscribe, do check out all the other excellent previous content. If you enjoyed this collab, do let me know and do let us both know in the comments. If you want future content like this, guys, do let us know. As always, it's been Mr. Everything English and
it's been Mr. Salles.
Peace.